And as it says, I'm going to start by inviting Rob to join. Hello, Rob. So Rob Lindsay's head of programs at the Space, and Rob's really the reason why we are doing this webinar. Was started with a bit of a conversation. Rob was sort of kind of got me thinking. So, you know, what was it, Rob, that you thought was behind this webinar, and why do you think that sort of thinking of reimagining almost, or thinking of your work in a digital context, why do you think that's exciting and creative and really important?
Thanks, Linda. Yeah, it was inspired really by conversations with a number of people, including our two other speakers here today as well, about how we adapt in-person or live experiences into digital iterations of that, and how along the way they become something new and something different, something that works as a standalone digital experience, often with key audiences in mind, but is approached creatively and with a sense of fun. And a number of people I'd spoken to, I was really struck by both the attitude and the execution of how they approached this, often creating something that felt different and fresh. But I think crucially, there were really obvious takeaways. A lot of the ways in which people were approaching these projects felt really just simple and well thought out. There was a real kind of clarity to them. And it just felt that there were lots and lots of takeaways. And in fact, the two speakers that we've got here today, my conversations with both of them, I did come away thinking, gosh, I'd love other people to be able to hear what they've just been describing and what they've been saying, which is why I came to you and said, I think we should do this. So that's the main thing, really. I think that we do sometimes, when we look at adapting something into digital or versioning something into digital, we do still very commonly go down the route of recording things and just putting them out as a video or a piece of audio. It might creep a bit further, but I think it's really interesting to look at how we can make something that genuinely feels like even if you were able to take part in the in-person live experience, you would still go and do the digital version as well. There's such a kind of additional element to it. It's so clear and well thought out that, yeah, it feels like you would do both. Neither of them are kind of an inferior version of the other. So yeah, that's most of the thinking, really, and I'm really looking forward to today.
Fab, thank you. Rob, I forgot to ask you to describe yourself. Will you do that?
I beg your pardon. Yeah, my name's Rob. That's fine. My name is Rob. I'm a middle-aged man with short greying hair, and I'm wearing a big white pullover because we're getting into the cold months.
Okay, smashing. Thank you. So I'm going to invite Damon to join us first. Damon Jackson Waldock from Art House Wakefield. And what we're speaking about, the piece that the Space commissioned, is it's around a piece called Paradise Carpet, which is an exhibition, as Damon will explain. But I'm sort of picking this up just as a bit of context. So what Rob was saying was, this is all about not just recording work, but making it available. And Paradise Carpet's kind of got two elements to it, hasn't it? So we're going to cover both what happened in the gallery and also the what happened online piece too. So we've got both of those. And then so that's just a bit of a explainer. But Damon, do you want to would you like to introduce yourself, describe yourself, and then I'll ask you the question after that?
Yes, certainly. And yeah, thank you for inviting me to come along today. It's really exciting. Yeah, my name is Damon Jackson Waldock. My pronouns are he, him. I am wearing a black t-shirt. I'm in my early 40s, kind of dark to grey hair. I've got quite a bit of a beard going on at the moment for me, which is quite stubbly, and I'm wearing kind of big round black and gold glasses. Yeah, so that's me.
Smashing, thank you. So just starting off with a bit, so we're doing a bit of context setting, really. Can you tell us what is the Art House, and what is it that you're trying to do with your digital offer? Who are you trying to reach with it? Just give us a bit of background.
Yeah, so the Art House, it's a charity, it's an arts charity that's been around now for 31 years. But we've only had a physical space for around 16 years in the heart of Wakefield, in West Yorkshire. We're an art gallery. We've got two main exhibition spaces, cafe, shop, but also we have maker spaces such as print studios, darkroom, ceramics studios, and then we have 45 artist studios on site as well. So that's predominantly artists, some designers, and a few arts charities that work from the art house. So we're quite quite an ecosystem of kind of a mixture and a blend of amazing kind of creative talent. And the art house was set up really 30 years ago with a wheelchair user and a non-wheelchair user in wanting to create space for both of them as artists to be able to make work together. Back in 1994, that was quite rare. That didn't exist. Everything was kind of inaccessible. And then a group got together to kind of create a space, build a purpose-built building for people to be able to make work together. As that was 30 years ago, it was very much focused very much on the physical disability and those that didn't have disabilities working together. But when we fast forward to now, it's all about access and inclusion. So what we do here is all around supporting those with disabilities, but also barriers to artistic practice, poor mental health, kind of working class experience, global majority people that have faced a barrier to artistic practice. And I guess that's always our main focus, really. And so when an artist comes to me with ideas and said, I've never done this, or I'd like to do this, that's kind of our starting point for working on projects. And this is what happened with the artist Sarah Hussein here, kind of wanted to move her kind of 2D works into a 3D realm, digital realm. But what we're trying to do with our digital experience really is we're just constantly looking at what we are as an art gallery in terms of who we're for, who we're not reaching. We have this philosophy that there is no hard to reach audiences, it's just the galleries that are. So and one of the things that really drew me to this project and to working with the space was that we do find that kind of digital light elements, projections, they're quite an accessible way for people to engage with contemporary visual art, which can be quite off-putting at times. So that was kind of the way that we came into it first. It wasn't a starting point of we just want to increase our digital offer. It was more about what ways can we work with artists, support them in doing new things, and also ways to draw in audiences that might not necessarily come to, say, a painting exhibition or a sculpture exhibition.
Thank you. Thank you. So you're sort of really thinking about what might people want? How do you entice people in? And I think I'm sure as a conversation with everybody, we'll come back to your point about the gallery being the hard to reach,
Yeah.
potentially, and what does that mean and what do you do about it and so on. Fab. Thank you very much. I'm going to invite Cat to join us now as well. Hello. Hi, Cat.
Hi, everyone.
So would you like to introduce and describe yourself, and then we'll kind of get you to do a similar kind of thinking about Live to Your Living Room?
Sure. My name is Kat. My pronouns are she and they. I am a middle-aged white woman with bright pink hair, stand out in a crowd pretty well. I'm wearing my favourite fleecy jumper because it's quite chilly today, and I have at least 4 musical instruments visible in my Zoom background, and you may feel free to guess which ones they are if you can spot them in the chat.
Thank you. Thanks, Kat. So do you want to tell us about, give us some background to Live to Your Living Room and what you're trying to do with your digital offer? Well, your offer is digital, isn't it?
It is, yeah, sure. So Live to Your Living Room was born in lockdown as a sort of a quick response to venues closing. I was running a festival, supposed to be running a festival in Oxford in April 2020, and as we know, that didn't happen, but we decided to put it online. And so within about 5 weeks, we turned around a sort of a fully interactive online festival with 48 live events across 3 days. And we found we found people really loved it, and they really loved the connection, they really loved the community. It tapped into something that was missing in those kind of early days of lockdown, which was the ability to kind of connect and be part of a thing with other people. And then what we found as we kind of went on is, first of all, our audiences were saying to us, please don't stop, please keep doing these gigs. We're still, we're still in lockdown, we're still feeling lonely, all of that stuff. But even as venues started to open up, we were getting really, really strong messages from part of our audience who were saying, I've never been able to see as much live music as I've been able to in lockdown. This has never happened for me before. Please don't stop doing this, because this is really important. And sort of saw that echoed over social media as well, in the kind of disability spaces on social media. People were saying that, lockdown has been incredibly accessible for me for the first time, and I'm worried that that's all going to kind of get taken away. And we felt very strongly that it was something really important that we should kind of keep doing, and that we'd sort of found this kind of sort of forgotten audience almost, who had never been able to access the arts until the pandemic and until lockdown and until everything went digital. And I find, even as in my background, it's disability arts and inclusion, and even in conversations in inclusion spaces, they're quite rightly focused on getting people into venues. It's very important, but we sort of neglect that subset of the audience for whom that just isn't an option. It could be neurodivergence, it could be mental health issues, it could be caring responsibilities, geographical isolation, not wanting to go out by yourself, not feeling safe to go out in public. There's any number of reasons that people just can't go out. And so we sort of took the view of, well, they still deserve to experience this arts and live music experience, and all of the benefits that come from that, because it's very well documented, all of the health benefits and the social benefits that come from partaking in the arts and culture, and people deserve to be a part of that, even if they're not able to come out into the venues. So yeah, that's us in a nutshell, really. We're bringing really joyful, community-based live music experiences to people in their homes.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions or comments for each other, in response to that? Rob or Damon, anything you wanted to, that made you think about anything particular?
I was just going to say how clear it is that this activity is audience driven, not just audience focused, but audience driven. And I think what Kat said about how a lot of people did experiment with digital experiences during lockdown, simply because they couldn't have people in their venues and galleries and performance spaces, or they couldn't tour, or they couldn't do the things they'd been doing previously. In addition to reaching the audience, the existing audience who they could no longer connect with, everyone doing these digital things did connect with an audience that they'd never been able to reach. They had been, as Damon says, they had been a hard to reach arts offering for those people, and all of a sudden they made themselves accessible to a whole host of folk who, again, as Kat said, please don't forget us. And I think that, unfortunately, I think a few audiences have been forgotten along the way, and I think it's really fantastic to see this work that is focused on maintaining and offering a connection with those people, and that is the driving force for both of these organisations. Yeah.
So I think I'm also very struck by the fact that we call the webinar Delivering Delightful Digital Experiences, and then we're also talking about accessibility, and what Kat just about. People deserve, everybody deserving lovely experiences in whatever form, and that's an interesting thing, isn't it? That it's only delightful, the delight. Where do we get the delight from that makes people want to come and enjoy it?
And I think that, I was just going to say, I think there's an element that we'll get into as we talk more about the different projects and some specific examples as well, which is that both of these organizations are delivering fun and curious and creative opportunities as well. These are things that don't feel, I suppose sometimes things could feel a bit like we're kind of logging on to do something a bit formal, or logging on to do something that feels a bit I don't know, scholarly sometimes. I think while we do use laptops for entertainment and things like that, a lot of us do also use them for work, or younger people using them for homework as well. But I know that the work that both of these organisations are producing is just great fun as well, and I really wanted just to underline that, and I think that will become clear as we move forward as well.
Let's do that, and then let's carry on. I was going to give Damon and then Cat about 10 minutes, I think, just to tell us about. Let's do it almost a case study, really. We do this sort of bit of interrogation into your work, so that's all right. I'm saying 10 minutes because I know there's an awful lot we can cover, so I might have to kind of let you know when we kind of run into time. But so, Damon, do you want to start by sort of telling us a bit more specifically about Paradise Carpet? You've explained that it was a lot about, as Zara was saying, wanting to move into kind of more digital work, but a bit more about the thinking behind it, both in terms of the work that she created in the gallery and the online version as well. So over to you, really.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Paradise Carpet, it does feel like it was kind of in two parts, and the second part, the kind of the online element was born as we were developing the first one. And it was great working with the space to kind of interrogate what that online version might be from what originally it was going to be, which I'll touch upon. But it began by Zara had done some, so Zara saying is an artist who kind of works with a lot of shape geometry, lots of colorful imagery, and has done things and projected onto buildings and made kind of wall-based sculptures. And she really had this idea to select so many carpets from around the world in kind of collections. Some of these carpets have not been seen or walked on or sat on for centuries, but wanted to kind of pull them out of their collections and then reanimate them, digitize them, break their layers up, and then reanimate them so that each of these carpets from around the world would kind of slowly evolve, move, and then kind of flow into the next. So she ended up picking 5 carpets from Turkey, Iran, Pakistan, and then a William Morris print, with this idea that there's no kind of William Morris's kind of this idea of this traditional English design, but actually it's very kind of it was taken and inspired from Islamic designs and traditions. So this idea that wanted to make originally it was going to be called Peace Carpet, where we all come together, we all sit on this carpet, and each one of these designs blurs into the other. And it kind of came at a time where we were in the summer of 2024, where there was a lot of kind of protests around anti-immigration, and which are happening more so now, but at the time it had kind of just kicked off in the north, and so it felt like a really good time to be exploring this. But also she wanted to challenge herself and kind of she'd done light projections, but she'd never gone into this kind of realm of working with animators and digitalizing it. And I think I've joked around at the time thinking that, it was like, it seems quite a simple project to do, but actually when the more I've learned about this, it's not a realm I come from, the more complicated, complex it was. So she worked with people in students that were learning kind of live technology that were based in Wakefield, worked with them and worked with some animators to kind of bring these carpets to life. So in the gallery, once it was finished, we projected it from the ceiling across the entire floor of our gallery space onto a white carpet, and just invited audiences to come and sit on the carpet. They had a soundscape produced for the backing, and it was just this real kind of space to just sit, reflect. It was very kind of touched upon the well-being, and people had naps on there, and it really just brought so many different people together, and how people used it and responded to it was absolutely amazing. And it was incredibly popular. And it really did what the artist wanted to do, and also what we like to do, as in kind of bringing this idea of people together. We're, the art house, I will say, is a gallery and a studio sanctuary, and part of our role in having those accolades really is about trying to develop stronger community cohesion between people that are seeking asylum, that have emigrated, moved over here, been forced over here, with local people, and it definitely supported that vision that we want to do here. And then the more digital element to it, although the online version of that was when we originally was doing the project, one of the things that we tried to do within budgets is document at least 5 or 6 of our major exhibitions using VR walkthroughs. Something again which kind of we came out of people were doing in the pandemic, but we've always tried to do it with the understanding that not everybody can reach us, whether it be because of their international, or they're not local to us, or that they're isolated and can't experience our exhibitions. So we've always tried to have an element where you could go online, if that's possible for you, take a walk through the exhibition, things will pop up, there'll be audio with the artist, you'll get to see the artworks in more detail. And that was always the plan, to do that with this show. But actually it became quite clear that with this particular show, because we were projecting on the floor, and we did have some artworks on the wall, but the main thing was the piece on the floor, that might be a little bit boring, and and not exciting. And what are you going to VR? What are you going to walk through on the? So it was kind of like, well, what do we do? And then we started thinking and coming up with this idea that it was all around cohesion, bringing together people, but also this idea of being able to meditate or prayer or lay down and have a nap. That was the vision of the artist, that she wanted people to do in the space. And how do you translate that online? So we kind of came up with this idea that we'd do a guided audio visual meditation using the visuals that slowly changed. So people could watch the actual animation, but also be guided and do, if they want to, do a meditation at home, using projecting the lights onto the wall, or turning the lights off, watching the laptop, or just closing your eyes and listening to the sounds and the actual sound piece that was made. So that's how that idea was born from what we originally wanted to do.
So we'll put the link into the chat, because the meditation, I can't think, it's not 10 minutes, is it? How long is it?
I think it was around 12 minutes, because the full piece, the 5 carpets, took around 12 minutes to kind of go through its cycle. So we've got a couple of online meditations there. A lot of our audiences, a lot of our users around that time speak Arabic and Farsi. So we did an English version, a Farsi version, and an Arabic version. Then we also did a version that was blended, with all 3 of us kind of talking over one another. Maybe that's not as as soothing as just the kind of the ones on their own, but we wanted to try it. This idea of blending and cohesion was quite important. So yeah.
It's not that's not your favorite. So that's interesting, because it sounds like that's the most interesting idea. You think are you pleased with how that worked?
I'm pleased with how it worked. I guess it depends on what you want to get out of it. So we've had some people say that they want to be able to do the guided meditation, where that version you could still do it, but I don't understand Farsi and Arabic, but I'm listening to the language, I'm listening to how it's spoken, and it's soothing, and so I'm not necessarily doing the guided audio meditation as telling me to close my eyes and then visualize this, and I'm just listening to the soothing sound. So I quite like the blended version, but I like it more for what it stands for, this idea of coming together, and I think my preference would probably be the Arabic or the Farsi versions, singular, but just because I think it's a beautiful language and love listening to it. So yeah, but there's an option for a few different options to, yeah.
And I think when you're talking about the project, but until you actually see the work, you don't. It's so kind of complex. It's interesting, isn't it? Because we're talking about it as a sort of simple, thinking it would be a simple project and all of that, but actually the sort of layers of carpet. It's quite visually, it's incredible, and then you've got these different sound layers. It's like you've thought about all of the senses and how is this going to be experienced by people.
Yeah, I mean that again, it was something that was beyond what I could even think about. But again, I think naively, and I thought we're just creating projections, colorful projections, and we're just
Just, that's that word, isn't it?
it's
Just.
just that, and you know, and I don't think I mean, I believed in the project fully and absolutely loved it, but I didn't fully understand how complex and how many months it would take for the artist to work with people to literally pull out all of those different layers from the carpets. I think one of the carpets took a couple of months to pull out and to do that. So I didn't fully appreciate as a curator, as someone that is working on multiple projects at once, moving, you know, other projects, how complex that was um, until way after it was up and running. Because I think the first thing it was just how amazing it was to experience it and be there, and then actually having the artist talk and do talks, and then me having to do talks to school groups about it. It became like, wow, this has really took a long time, and it was so complex, and so I really started to appreciate how much effort went into the production of it.
Yes. We've got a question which might, you know, sort of connecting back to your experience, but Paul asked a while ago, I'm interested in how creative energy can be relayed into a digital world. And I wonder if you'd have any thoughts on how you, so the things that you did that did that, because it clearly is full, literally full of creative energy.
Yeah.
I was going to say, sorry, Damon. There was one thing that kind of echoes what you've just said, just to kind of get started, which is, I think it is when you see Paradise Carpet in any iteration, if you see it in person or if you see it online, I think you, at some point while you're looking at it, you will start thinking about how it's being done, you know, how the animation is working. This is an incredibly complex carpet pattern, which reduces down, you know, the whole thing kind of folds in on itself element by element, almost as if as if someone's pulling the threads and things are disappearing, but it's doing it kind of all symmetrically and kind of reducing down to a point, and then the next one's coming out, and then when it's complete, reducing back down as well. And you're kind of enjoying it on an aesthetic level, but inevitably at some point you start looking at kind of how it's doing it and appreciating the work and the creativity that's gone into that. And I think anything that allows you to just observe and take things in, and because a lot of digital work is incredibly candid, is incredibly intimate. It's things that we do individually, it's things that we do on our own as well. And just having that kind of time and space to appreciate that creativity certainly was something that struck me as someone who didn't have any of the kind of context of the processes. You know, we saw bits and pieces, but there was such impact for me in seeing the final version and watching the digital version, which I've watched a number of times since as well, and it still has all of that impact, if not more. It's great. But sorry, Damien, go on. What were you going to say?
I mean, yeah, I was kind of going to say similar things, really. It's like that idea of, well, when you were when you were in the space, and you've got this. It's a very slow, it's very slow moving, it's, you know, but you are appreciating visually what it is first, but then yeah, you start to then spend, you kind of, you realize that you're doing the cycles more, you know, you're in there for 25 minutes, then you might be in there for longer, and that's why we had people falling asleep on there. And then you start to go, how is this actually moving? There's a one carpet, I think it's the William Morris carpet, where it's got peacocks in there and they're moving around and then they're disappearing. And it's, you know, you start to think, how, you know, how was this actually brought to life? You think, again, it was my naivety that was going, you just take an image and then you make it move, but how does that happen? And so yeah, and then how do you then take that energy, to that creative energy onto the online platform again? Because it's, I mean, I was worried at first because, you know, I think you've got screen time, you've got this idea that does screen time equal well-being experience? But I think the nature of how the piece moves quite slowly and everything's not fast-paced. I think, yes, it has energy, but it's got this it's got creative energy, but in terms of the energy of the movement and the noise and the sound, everything's just it does kind of translate quite well into that piece. I mean, it's the completely two different experiences, but I think they complement each other quite well, and they pick out all of the themes that we wanted to do with both the projects, about this idea of slowing down and, you know, just enjoying being present in that moment, whether you're watching it or not, with your eyes closed. And that's what happened in the gallery. You're present, or you're asleep, or you're praying, or your kids are running around doing backflips. It was just, yeah, it was incredible.
Could I
Thank
jump
you.
in?
Go on,
Sorry,
Yeah,
Kat.
sorry, go on.
So just wanted to pick up on something actually that each of you said. We talk a lot at Live to Living Room about quality of experience, and that really, what you said, Damon, just now was really kind of connecting with me in that sense. Like when you're deciding to do a work in the digital space, it's we find it's less about kind of going, how can I do this to the audience, and we're asking, what experience do I want the audience to have when they're taking part in this piece of art, and from that perspective it becomes much more straightforward. Like you don't need to worry about technology, because the technology then is just a tool to let you create the experience that you want to create. It's not the outcome, it's the path to the outcome. And the other thing I wanted to pick up on that Rob said was the intimacy of it, and actually a digital online experience we found can often be really conducive to creating this really intimate connection between an artist and an audience. And a lot of people who come to our online concerts, so I'll get into more of this a little bit in a minute, but we do two different types of concert. One is what we call a hybrid, where there's an audience in the venue as well as online, and then our sort of more traditional Live to Living Room concerts, which obviously grew in lockdown when we couldn't have audiences in venues. It's just an artist in their home, an audience in their homes, and they're really connecting home to home, essentially, like living room to living room. And a lot of our audiences have really talked, and some of the artists as well have really talked about how intimate that feels, and how special it can feel to connect with the audience in that way. And then obviously we use the technology to help facilitate that connection, and then we say, right, what else can we do to help facilitate that connection? So, you know, we do all of our gigs in Zoom meetings, so that the artist can see all of the audience, and the audience can unmute and applaud and that kind of thing. And then particularly in lockdown, when artists were really feeling sort of starved of that connection with the audiences, it was moving some of them to tears the first time they got that applause over Zoom. So yeah, just wanted to.
It's a great point, Kat, because I think, and Paul, who asked the question, thank you very much, Paul. That question and the wording echoes what a few people say, I think, which is that people sometimes worry that creative endeavors that they put out online can be lost in all of the noise and all of the things that's on there, or creative work that we post online can be met by an audience who is kind of scrolling past, who is grazing and browsing and channel hopping, essentially. And I think sometimes it can feel like we're putting lots of creative energy into something that people aren't necessarily engaging with. And I think it's really notable that both of you, Cat and Damon, your organizations have done work that genuinely people have engaged with, even though you've taken very different approaches as well. There is a depth of engagement with the work that you're doing, and we'll come on to audience responses later. I know we're going to talk more about that in a bit.
Actually, I was really wondering whether we should talk about that now, because that's where we are, and it's the important bit, isn't it? And then we can come back to Cat, can it do some explaining, but let's just stick with audience responses, because that's really what we're about, isn't it? We're saying, you know, how are you creating experiences that are sort of sensory, intimate, that what can you do on, you know, in a digital space that you can't do otherwise? So maybe we should just carry on with that. Any thoughts on from either of you, Damon or Kat? Do you want to sort of carry on thinking about the audience, your audience, how they responded?
So what you were saying just there, it really, so one of the things, and we talk a lot about the fact that if it was just about the music, you just put a CD on. Like there's something
Yeah.
else, something intangible about coming together to experience live music that is not purely about the art itself. And for the last 5 years, we've constantly been kind of talking about what is this experience, how do we then capture some of that in what we do online. So we talk a lot about community, we talk a lot about connections. I think also there's sensory experiences which are difficult to convey online.
Yes.
But what you can do is you can build in some of the other things, like for example, in a venue, you might have low lighting to create atmosphere. And online, obviously, you're not in control of the lighting. So we then go, okay, so why do we have the lighting? Okay, so the lighting is to signal that you're moving into the event space. It's to signal that you're that the time is time for it to start now. It's to maybe kind of take away the individual focus and perhaps make you feel more like you're part of an audience rather than you feeling self-conscious like as an individual. And then we go, okay, so how could we then do those things in an online gig? So we think about when people come in to our Zoom room, we have music playing in the background, and we have a host who welcomes people as they arrive. We have a set of slides that play, giving people information about this is what's going to happen, this is when it's going to start. And we just look at not so much how do we make an exact recreation of what's happening in a venue, but how do we create those same feelings? How do we create that same experience through this digital means?
And I'd go even further as to say the experiences that I've seen on Live to Your Living Room, it almost feels like rather than just replicate what's happening in the venue, you really take advantage of the fact that you're not restricted by a lot of the things that venue is restricted by. When you talk about a host, that kind of master of ceremonies role, and I've seen examples that you've done where that's someone who's been on the stage before the show begins, is talking exclusively to the audience. That's a participant, often it might be a kind of creative leader of the performing, of those performing at that time, and you're getting a kind of what feels like a very intimate one-on-one, or at least a little round table with someone. And that is an offering that isn't being afforded to people who are in the venue. I remember there was a Q&A run during one of the intervals, and again it was by the person who had to go, oh, I'm being called back to the stage, I'll see you on there in a minute. It felt very conversational and very pally, very kind of friendly. It was really nice. So yeah, I think even more so, you're doing things that can't be done. You're creating engagement with an audience that isn't afforded to anyone other than probably VIPs and people donating quite a lot of money. So yeah, it was really nice to see.
Damon, go on.
I think for me, one thing that just jumped to mind was because I was, trying to think about the similarities between Cat and I and what we're trying to do, and I was thinking, well, it's different music and art, and but actually, one thing that I've just thought about is like that idea of what you've just said, Rob, about things that you get. I mean, I love live music. I go to gigs all the time, and actually, I think back to some of the things I went to in COVID, the pandemic, online gigs, and I'm starting to think, oh yeah, I really enjoyed that for that, and now you reminded me of that kind of the things you get through that experience that you don't get at a live music concert. And the similarity for me was thinking in a art gallery setting and what you're coming to see versus what you can take away. It's the kind of the additional takeaway, isn't it? Like, Cat's offering something that is, you get all of these additional things that you wouldn't get at a live music concert. You've come to see digital Paradise Carpet, and then people like a takeaway often, and it's usually a leaflet, or it's lots more paper in the world. But actually you go home and you log on and maybe you do the guided audio. So it's kind of like, what additional things are you getting that I might not necessarily always do in an exhibition. So I was thinking about visitors, about having that extra takeaway from the experience that they've had that they might not necessarily get in a gallery or in a music concert. So yeah. probably
Do you,
Yeah.
do you want to carry on, Damon, and just tell us a little bit about how people, because I think that this is a really important part of Paradise Carpet. We've talked about, we think, how beautiful and wonderful we think it is, but can you tell us about how people have used and experienced both the carpet in the gallery and also the online, the meditative version?
Yeah, no, I mean, one of the things that we were touching upon just then was this, and I think Kat mentioned about the quality of the experience. And I think we can get so bogged down in the contemporary art and gallery world about numbers, about how many people have seen your show. And, every time I have to report all the time on 5,000, 6,000. And actually we're never able to kind of go, but somebody spent 3 hours in that space, or 20 minutes in the space. I think our time limit in a gallery space these days, with everything that's going on in the world, it's like 7 minutes, like through an exhibition. It's and I'm guilty of that sometimes.
Are you saying that's how long people take on
There's,
average?
there's stats to say like people just don't engage. It's 7 minutes, it's in, it's out, it's walk through, and how much do you really engage with that artwork? You've seen it. You must have seen images of, I mean, the big galleries. Everyone's got their phones out. You're not looking at the art. So for us, the main thing was this idea that time spent in the space and how long people stayed in there. I don't know how you report on that, but people spent a long time in there. So that was quite. For us, that was really powerful. Yeah, even though we did get more visitors than we would usually do in that period of time to a show, the numbers were great, but actually the time spent in the gallery with the art was even better. And that was good. So that was one of the biggest things that we took away. But people just made it their own space. So we had uh, opening night, we had tons of kids backflipping, running around. No adults could get on the carpet. It was definitely a kid's sensory space. And then the next day, or a few days later, on a Tuesday afternoon, it's quiet. So we had baby massage, and it wasn't anything we'd set up. The groups had just come, brought their babies, started kind of doing their massage with their babies. They've kind of organized it themselves. We did some of our own engagement work, as I say, as part of our studio sanctuary. We did a lot with people from all around the world that use our facilities. We did some sessions with them. We had somebody wanting to do a private prayer, and so we closed the gallery off so they could do their pray in there. We had school groups come in. I did a curator talk with a school group one day where we had 30 kids all sat around, and we just did a kind of informal lesson around there. It was just so great that we had so many different people using it. Yoga, meditation, as I say, people were napping. We had, a member of our team went to lay down, and 20 minutes later she'd come back, she'd fallen asleep. And, it was just, people really made it their own, and it was used for so many different things. And ironically, we had somebody come for us to see another show that was titled Nature Sensory, but it wasn't a sensory exhibition. It was actually just about using. Anyway, it wasn't a sensory exhibition. It was misleading, I guess, in the title. And somebody brought some of their family members that would wanted to come and experience a sensory space, and we had that on at the time, and they spent ages in there. And so it was used by different people from different backgrounds and different experiences, and it was just incredible to see, really, and people coming together as well. That was the main thing, that you had so many people using it in the space for different reasons at the same time. It was great.
I think that's also a really important part of accessibility is that people can access it on their own terms, in their own time, at their own level. And it just sounds incredible, like being able to do that in the space. And for our audiences, being online is a massive access point for them. So we have people who have fatigue issues and they can't cope with watching a whole concert all the way through, so they can watch our recording and they can pause it and rest as much as they need to. Or we have people that maybe you really want to come to the concert, but they can't guarantee that they're going to be feeling well enough at any time, so they would never be able to buy a ticket for a venue concert, because what if they couldn't go, what if they weren't well enough and they couldn't go, and it would just be a waste of money. So but with us, they know that they've got this period where they can watch it. They can turn the volume up, they can turn the volume down, they can turn the lights up, they can turn the lights down, they can turn it off when everyone starts clapping, and they can sort of deal with that sensory environment. And for people who need to have quite specific sensory environments. I mean, I'm autistic myself, and I have a very kind of happily controlled sensory environment at home where I can, exist happily and talk wonderfully. If you put me into a coffee shop, I would be stuttering and every other word would take 6 minutes to come out, and because the sensory environment is too overwhelming for me. And we've just found that this kind of accidental accessibility has been like a game changer for people.
Yeah.
I guess that's the thing, isn't it? That people don't think of, people don't feel places and spaces are for them for many reasons, whether it be access, or kind of worried that they're not going to understand. So from an art gallery point of view, yes, there's reasons why people don't come for access and, and barriers with health and disability, but also a lot of people don't think art galleries are for them. It's like they don't understand. I don't understand a lot of it. So, and I work in the arts. So to kind of create things where people can think this is for me. I can do my own thing here. And I always think this idea of would you go to the Tate Modern and sit on the floor and get out a picnic? No, you wouldn't. Why not? Because it's a public space and you could do that, and you probably get shooed off. So, would you go to the Tate Modern or no, I'm just picking them. But and to start doing yoga or take a nap on the floor, and I don't know, it was those kind of things would spring into mind. But people don't necessarily think an art gallery is for them because they're worried on how to be in that space, and possibly same with music concerts, not for them because they're going to meet my need, that I need to think about in terms of all the things that Kat just mentioned.
Yeah, we get people. We've done focus groups with our audience, and they talk about things like if they were to go to a venue, they would have to almost do like a recce beforehand. They're having to work out where the exits are. They're having to, make sure that they've got a strategy in case they need to get out quickly. They might need to know how accessible the toilets are. It becomes this mission almost to actually just get out of the house and get into somewhere new. And in some ways, it's the sort of the mental barriers of that. It's just exhausting. If you've got a family where you've got a lot of additional needs and you've got a lot to think about, it's exhausting trying to work out, is that going to be accessible for me or not? And one thing that we have found with the online gigs where we've been doing hybrids and we've been doing a gig from a venue is audience members who've watched the gig online have then later gone to the venue for the first time, having seen it on the stream.
Yeah, which is a concern that people still talk to us and say, if we're going to do digital versions, are we not giving it away, or are we not cannibalizing our kind of in-venue audience? So that's really interesting.
Yeah, we get that a lot as well. And actually, I might talk about that a bit later if that's all right.
Yeah. In fact, I was going to say, Linda, I'm conscious we're kind of due a screen break, but I was going to say, I think there's some questions in the chat again about the kind of logistics as well that Kat's just mentioned too. And also as well, I thought after the break, it might be useful as well to talk about the difference between these two projects as well. So I think there's some really, while the kind of attitude has been absolutely the same in terms of wanting to make yourselves reachable to these people, there's some fundamental differences between the different projects that have been strengths for each that I think is really acknowledging for maybe anyone who's listening to this and thinking, I'm not quite sure how I could do one of these things. These are very much projects that are points on a line, so I thought it's worth acknowledging that.
Carry on. So Kat, so really this is your chance to just do the same thing, a bit of a case study. Tell us about Live to Your Living Room and what it is and how you work, and carrying on from where you were.
How long have you got, Linda? Because I could talk about this for hours.
I think it's 10 minutes.
10 minutes, great.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll try and give you a quick overview. Our basic model, which was developed in lockdown, was to how do we create like a really great quality gig experience remotely. So what we started doing is we developed a system where we send a flight case of equipment to an artist's house, and we there's a laptop in it as well, and we have a sound engineer in their house, and they remotely access the laptop, and then they mix the sound via Zoom. So the audience is getting a purpose mixed sound, like, oh, words have gone, like tailored for the Zoom experience, essentially. We do the same when we're going into venues as well. So we go into a venue for a hybrid gig, we send a box of equipment, we have a mic splitter. So you've got your musicians mic'd up on the stage, and then we've got a mic splitter so that the feed from their microphones goes off one way to the venue mixing desk, goes off the other way to our mixing desk. And we have a room mix and an online mix, because they both need to be slightly different to be optimized for getting the best sound. We will by this time next year be able to do the same thing with cameras. So we're developing. This is very exciting, actually. We've just been confirmed with some funding from the Createch Frontiers first grant round, and we are going to be developing essentially a plug and play remote gig solution. So we're going to send a big box to a venue. There'll be you just plug it into the electrics, plug it into the internet, get out the cameras, and then our technicians will remotely access the box and control the sound and control the cameras from wherever they are. So it means that it's much cheaper for people to put on, because you don't need travel, we don't need to get tons of bulky equipment in. It's much more climate friendly, because you're cutting down massively on all of those kind of carbon footprint costs, and it means that people will be able to experiment. They'll be able to try it out. They'll be able to just like hire the box from us and say, can you send us the box, set us up with a couple of engineers. And we've done gigs where the artist has been in one part of the country, the engineer's been like in exact opposite part of the country, the host has been in America, and the volunteer stewards, event crew have been all over the place. But it doesn't really matter where people are, and you don't have to go anywhere to do it. You can do it in your pajamas if you want to, which I frequently do. So I'm just catching up on Andrea's question. So so we've always tried to do it in a relatively low cost way, trying to like get the best experience that we can from whatever equipment we can use. And for us, because we're sending the equipment to the artist, it's got to be fairly straightforward. You can't expect the artist to do a full tech setup. So our boxes are all kind of pre-wired, pre-set up, and the artist just needs to plug in to the right channel, and needs to make sure that the internet's working. But the engineers kind of guide them through that on a day-by-day basis. Go on, Rob.
Do you mind? I was going to ask a question, and this is sort of in addition to the technical marvels that you're accomplishing as well. And you can kind of correct me if I'm remembering this slightly wrong. But I know that you're quite what's the word? I'm going to say that you are very keen to encourage the people that you work with to consider the at-home audience as something more than people just watching a CCTV feed.
Yeah.
All of this, when we talked before about kind of hosts and master of ceremonies and things like that, that's thinking that's very much come from you. And that's something that I think you're quite, I think strict is the wrong word, but I think you do really emphasize the importance of that. Maybe you don't think strict is too strong a word, but yeah, certainly it's something that I know you emphasized with the different people that you've worked with, to say, look, this needs to be, there needs to be that interaction. And I think that is something that's led to a lot of people almost tuning into Live to Your Living Room as if you were their local music venue. They don't necessarily know the artist, but they know they can trust you. They know they're going to get something. Have I overstated anything there? Or
no, not at all. I mean, we often we kind of think of ourselves as an online art centre, and we have got a sort of a local following, many of whom are in the States, who come to pretty much everything just because they like the experience and they like us and they trust us. you know, and so I do a lot of the hosting myself, and I get people. We went to Warwick Folk Festival this year because we were streaming from the Folk Festival for the first time, and I had people like audience members wanting to meet me because they're so used to seeing me on their televisions, like chatting to them like we're friends. But yeah, it's like it's a really important part of it. Otherwise, you're just watching other people have fun, and that's not the experience that we want to create. We want you to feel part of something. I want to just answer Andrea's question because she's asked how we raised money for it, and we didn't. We sold tickets. We started with nothing, and we sold tickets for the gigs because we wanted from the start to create something that was seen as like a valuable thing. A lot of people, when we went into lockdown, went into busking. Like a lot of musicians, they went into sort of effectively online busking with, you know, buy me a coffee, PayPal me, and we made the decision right up front. No, people, they're going to a concert. This is a concert. It's an experience. We have set it up, and so we ticketed it right from the start, and that's where all the funds have come from, and then we've just kind of built it bit by bit, gradually over time. And the really interesting thing is that we're selling more tickets now than we were in lockdown, which often is the other way around from what people expect it to be. But I dug into our numbers a little bit recently and picked out artists that I think there was a couple of dozen artists who we'd had around 2021 who then were rebooked and played again for us in 24-25, and 80% of them had sold more tickets than the 2021 concert, which is really cool. And in terms of like audience size, it varies a lot depending on the artists. I think we for a sort of relatively new emerging artist, we would maybe expect sort of 30 to 50 tickets, but we've also done gigs where, so Kareem Polwart is our patron, and she regularly has 800 people buying tickets for her concerts. So we have a very big Zoom room, but it's lovely. It still feels just as intimate as if there were only a few of you. And yeah, I just want to briefly say, because Andrea's also asked about kind of marketing, and we've been doing a lot of work over the last year. We've had some funding from the Arts Council to really kind of dig down into what it is that we do and why it is that we've been successful and been able to kind of keep doing this when other people maybe have struggled with it. And we've developed we've got ourselves a method. We've kind of written it all out. We've given it a posh name. It's called the One Audience Method, and it's like ONE capital letters, and it stands for the methodology will help you build an audience who are O for online as well as in your venue, N for nurtured and feeling valued, and E for engaged and loyal and coming back time after time. And we are just about to officially launch this method next month with a webinar, and Angela very kindly posted a pre-download link. So the first resource is going to be the first in a series of resources, is a free to download quick start to hybrid gigs. So we're looking at how we're applying our one audience method into doing a hybrid gig. So the method is built on 3 key pillars, which is connection, quality, and inclusion. And we've talked quite a bit about the connection and the quality side of things so far. So obviously the connection is about the kind of like, why do we do this? What experience are we wanting people to have? What sort of community are we wanting to build? The quality will kind of take you through the journey for the audience, but also for the artists. How do we kind of ensure quality of experience at each stage through the journey, from buying the ticket through to turning off your computer or leaving the venue? The inclusion section is the bit that we've not talked quite so much about, but that's really the audience development side of it. And that's when we start to look at, okay, how do you build an online audience, and how do you how do you cater, what needs do your audience have, and how do you kind of cater to that? And so we've kind of broken it down into sort of 3 steps of looking at the barriers of what will stop people coming to your gig. Like, don't even not thinking about online or in person or anything like that. What might stop someone coming to a gig? Then you think of your barriers, and then you think, okay, so who might be experiencing these barriers? And then what needs do those people have in order to have the experience that you want them to have? And then you can start to kind of break it down. And so it might be, for example, a barrier might be overwhelming sensory environment. So I might not want to go to a gig because I just can't control the sensory environment. So then we look at who that might be. It might be an autistic person. It might be a young child. It might be somebody with hearing issues. And then you look at, okay, so what does that person need in order to be able to fully enjoy that experience? So I need to be able to control the environment that I'm in, or I need to be able to choose when and how I interact with your event. And you can kind of break it down into those steps, and then you can look at really sort of specifically targeting, who are you targeting, how are you going to meet their needs, and kind of like how do you reach them? And so the kind of the final part of our method is really like digging down deep into that. And we're doing this is all stuff that we're doing ourselves as well. And I recently did a demographic survey of our audience just to kind of get a baseline of where we are now. And in terms of disabled people, carers, people with caring responsibilities, but also people, gender minorities, or people who are trans people, we are way over the national average in terms of percentage of our audiences for people who have those particular barriers. And that's really before we've gone out and done a sort of full-on targeted campaign for any of them. I was just trying to get a baseline for that. So there's people out there who are crying out for this kind of experience, and who are crying out for this connection, and just to be included and just to feel part of something.
Brilliant. Yeah. Thank you, Kat. I think it's really you're demonstrating results, aren't you? It's not just a theory. You're saying this is working, and then so generous to think about how you might share that with the wider world. I was going to ask you just to give an example, and then I'm going to kind of bring Damon back in. But one of the things that I thought was, as an example of how this works for you, you talked to me a lot about how you sort of have built communities around gigs and around the groups of people. Do you want to say something about that? Because again, I think it's a really sort of good example of creating this beautiful experience.
This is fun, and also it lets me tell my funny anecdote as well, which is good. So in one of our focus groups, somebody said to me, "Oh, I'd really like to come to online gigs and meet people," and that blew my mind, because I like to go to online gigs so that I don't have to meet people. Anyhow, I kind of went, oh my God, well, this is a thing. And then, went away and thought about it. This was also the kind of the beginnings of the connection pillar, is that I started to realise that this is what people were really looking for. And what we've ended up with, a couple of years down the line, is we have a WhatsApp community. And when people get a ticket for a gig, they get a link to join the WhatsApp community. We have a specific chat for each gig, as it happens, that people can jump on and sort of like chat throughout the gig. Again, like kind of harking back to those ideas of things that you can do in an online gig that you can't do in a venue gig. You can't kind of just sit at the back and whisper all the way through. But if you're the sort of person that wants to do that and to chat with people and to kind of make it a social thing, you can do that in our WhatsApp community. And people do. They sort of chat together quite happily. And then from that, we've had other groups form. So we've got a crafters group, and we've got a geocachers group, and we've got a pets of live to living room group, and people post photos of their dogs watching the gigs and that sort of thing. And it's just a really lovely way of kind of keeping that kind of community and that connection going. And in terms of, from a very kind of mercenary marketing sense, it's a very quick and easy and reliable way to connect with your audience. I can just send them a WhatsApp message. And the other day I was thinking, oh, I wonder what our audience thinks about this. And I just texted them. And I was like, I just had this thought. Anybody got any thoughts? And I got loads of responses back from people who are in the audience. So you get that really quick, immediate kind of real connection with the people that you're trying to engage with, and you can really learn about them, and you can get that relationship with them in really quite a deep way that I wouldn't have ever thought to do that.
Yeah.
When I was promoting venue-based gigs.
Interesting. Amazing. Can we just come back to Damon? Thank you so much, Cat. That's really sort of thought-provoking and interesting. And I was thinking, Damon, you know, Cat's talking about the sort of learning and the evolution, and I was wondering if, you know, when you think about the Paradise Carpet work that you've done with Zara, what have you learned from it in terms of creating sort of delightful experiences for people, and what thoughts does that bring up for you?
I mean, for me, I think the whole project, for us, it was quite a new way of exhibiting. Working with an artist and exhibiting. But I think what I've learned is that I think there's that kind of demand for some experiential experience within an art gallery setting, and I just think sometimes in the contemporary visual art world, it can be seen as being not as high quality in terms of like what you're putting in your gallery, because I mean, yeah, it's kind of, because it's an experience, it's more like I don't know how to describe it really, but I've kind of thought that actually this is more engaging, it's more appealing to people, and it still can be high quality. And, you know, it's again, the logistics of getting to create what Zara did was just beyond anything that you needed the expertise. And it's, so I think, again, this is kind of feeds into the broader art world about like what we should be putting in our galleries if you want to curate or you know, what's classed as high quality. And actually for me, this was incredibly high quality, but also really appealed to audiences, and to try to break that and understand that and why that was. And I think fundamentally it's because people felt themselves seen, or they felt like could own it, and I think for me that's what I take away now when we're thinking about future exhibitions. Not every single one's going to be like that, but already from that project last autumn winter, we've already gone on and created two shows already that I think doing kind of touch upon that experiential quality of how you use a gallery space, and you know, in a non-traditional, or what you might think of as a white gallery space to be used for. So I think I'm learning to embrace lots of different ways that we can get that. So we've, you know, this summer we had a big show that was full of trees, and it was a space to do yoga, and it was a space to lay on the floor. And I think you know, we really pushed and did more of that, I think, from doing the Zara's projects, completely different project, but that trying to create a sense of how you can use the space. Yeah.
I was going to say to you, when we spoke on the phone, you described it as trying to have a kind of talk of the town moment, and I thought that was really...
There is an element of that. There is an element of trying to you know, I mean, for me, where we're based in the center of Wakefield. Wakefield already has two incredible award-winning galleries that have a particular audience that go to them, you know, and that's great. Like, you know, and that's you buy your tickets to go and see these shows, and you have to travel to get there. But the center of Wakefield is kind of high, you know, it's not as wealthy, and it's so, you know, but at the same time wanting to create this idea of like, oh, have you seen that moment? We should go and do that. And again, it's just playing. I'm always playing with different ways to break down what the barriers are, what the barrier of the art gallery is. And I think that talk of the town, or have you seen that, or have you gone to do that, I think is a good way for people to spike that intrigue, to kind of step foot in through our door. When you step foot into the art house, you're not immediately, it doesn't look like you're stepping into an art gallery. It looks like you're stepping into a very warm cafe setting, and you know, we try to be quite welcoming, and you don't only have to put your toe in the gallery, but that's everything we're doing with our shows, and Zara's was a great example of us to kind of give people something that is intriguing to see what, you know, what is this art? What is this contemporary art? What is this artist trying to do? So I've taken a lot of that way of working into some of the projects that we're doing right now.
Go on, Rob.
I was going to just jump in and say there's one thing I think is really notable with both of these organisations is that you will just consistently turn up for these audiences. You know, I think that's part of it as well. Kat's talked about the amazing loyalty that you've built up and the rewards you're now getting from earning the trust of that audience as well. And Damon, every time I've spoken to you, and I know that with this project, it was always very, very important to you that there was always an at-home element. You know, you said there is a significant, to us, audience of at-home, I don't know if you call them patrons or, you know, how do you describe them, but certainly an audience there. And it was really, really important to say, when we do things, we're going to turn up for that audience. We're going to turn up in this digital space for those people and to build that up. I think what's equally very striking is that these are two very, very different approaches, because in one instance, we're looking at kind of live performance, which is a linear experience that has a beginning and a middle and an end, and everything that Live to Your Living Room have done is to make sure that people are guided through that process, that they feel as comfortable as possible, as seen, as engaged with as possible, looking at things that are happening before, during, and after those performances. I think that's really, really crucial. Then looking at what has happened with the art house is it's a non-linear experience. You know, this is a gallery experience. You would not want someone to meet you at the door and walk you around it and show you all the different things and kind of set the pace. It's been much more about saying, we're just going to make this available to you and kind of step back and get out of your way and allow you to engage with it however you want to. And that's been really, really striking, those two different approaches that have worked for the art, that have worked for the art form and the audience. I mean, Damon, I even asked the question, do you think that we talked about the carpet experience being something that looped with a pattern building, projecting onto the carpet, it builds out from a central point and then it contracts again, and then you'll get a different pattern. Then again, it's very almost tidal, like waves. Do you feel that people's interaction with it was influenced by the fact that there isn't a beginning and an end to that at all? You know, you can walk in halfway through and you don't feel like, oh, I've missed the start of this. You know, you can kind of jump on at any point and engage with it in any way. Do you think that that was a part of how people engaged with it?
Yeah, I mean, I've not really thought too much about that, but when I think about my own, but yeah, you're right. When I think about my own experience, I find I'm someone who's been in tons of galleries all, you know, over the last 20 years. One of the biggest barriers for me is going into some video, some kind of digital exhibition where you have to wait 15 minutes till it starts again, or
Yeah.
or you know, and sit, you know, you walk in and it's quite quiet, and should I be here, there's already people watching it, and for me it's always been a bit of a that's been a barrier. And also, actually, does it capture me and engage me straight away? Because again, we're living in this time where we're going into spaces and we want it quick and fast, and if it doesn't capture you straight away, we walk straight through to the next gallery space. So yeah, you're right, it felt warm already. It was colorful, accessible, and that's a lot of the things that I think that's something like that could do. But yeah, it didn't have a beginning and an end, and you know, people stayed, and so yeah, so I think it did feel that contributed to people could just come and step foot and sit on the floor and just experience it for as long as they wanted, without this is the duration of it, it will start again in 12 minutes time. So yeah, I think that did make a huge difference. So yeah.
And I would say, and sorry, Linda, I just add, even the at-home version of it, you did multiple different versions of it as well. You know, you weren't saying this is how this needs to be experienced. You gave people options and they could engage with it however they wanted to as well, which I think is really notable as well.
And that kind of like brings it back round to this idea that we've been talking about, is the idea of what is the quality of experience that you want your audience to have as they're doing this. And I was just thinking as you were talking, I want to just offer up another thing that came from our focus groups that we did, was people were talking about, so the focus groups were specifically for people who face barriers to accessing arts events, cultural events. And one of the things that they talked about was the language that people use and the way that they, as an audience, were talked about. And somebody said that they often felt like a second class audience almost, because people talk about the real audience and the online audience, or the real gig or the live gig. Like for us, it's people always say, oh, but I prefer live music, and we're like, we are live, we're literally live, it's in the name, clues in the name. But people sort of somehow perceive the thing in the venue to be the real thing, and then the thing online to be just like a kind of not quite the same. So we think very carefully about, and we kind of have briefings to our artists to say, this is how we need you to talk about the audience. And sometimes it goes in, sometimes it doesn't, but it's all kind of advocacy work as well about this is why in the one audience method, this is where the nurtured came from, because people need to feel like they belong there. They need to feel like Damon talked about, feeling like it's for you. And if you're just sitting there like a fly on the wall watching other people have fun, and people are saying, oh, well, this is the real audience, and you're just, the second class on watching from the fly on the wall kind of thing, then why would you keep coming back to that? And why would you want to be part of that?
Yeah, very good point. Thank you. So everybody's nodding furiously, and it's a really good thinking point, isn't it? I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to break into the conversation because we're really nearly out of time, and we've just got a couple of things we need to do before the end, which is one, we're putting a link to our evaluation into the chat. If people wouldn't mind filling in the evaluation, that's really, really helps us to understand what's working, what we could do differently, all of the things that we've just been talking about. How can we make this an even better experience? And the second thing is to say that at the space, we have some opportunities for kind of informal one-to-one advisory sessions. We're going to put a link with, so should just be thinking, so this is an invitation to the audience, the webinar, whether this might be something that's useful or interesting for you. We're going to put the link in to how you'd access those. But I'm just going to ask Rob, really. So Rob is one of the team at the space who offer the one-to-one ad hoc sessions to people. Rob, could you give people a sort of a flavour of the sorts of things that you might give in a short advice session to give them an idea?
Yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah, they're really an opportunity just to chat to a member of the team about something that you're exploring at the moment with digital. It's not supposed to be a test, or you shouldn't feel like you're kind of going for an MOT or something like that. It really is an opportunity to kind of talk through something you might be exploring in some aspects of digital, and that might be creative, that might be around your comms, that might be about anything really. And we'll just kind of talk through it with you and help however we can. It may be that we're signposting to other resources. It might be we're signposting to other case studies. It might be we're just listening to you. You might have some gut instincts about things that you just want to sense check them and run them past someone as well. It can be whatever you need, whatever level you need, really. I would always stress, well, we're always here, and it's always really interesting to hear about the things that people are doing. So
Thank you. Okay, at which point I think it's 12:29. It feels like a good time to stop and say thank you very much to Cat and to Damon for sharing your work, your enthusiasm, your approaches, and your thinking about audiences. It's been fab.